the last edition of Who We Are with Leah Media TV. It's the last edition of 2020, and happy Christmas to you all. Welcome on board. And today we have a Seanachai. His name is Donal O'Maolain. He's a school teacher. He's a traditionalist. He's an Irish folk tale singer. And he'll be doing with us a few poems and a few folk tales, and we'll have a little chat. Please enjoy as you watch.
Many years ago in the County Kerry, there lived a woman by the name of Peg the Damsel. And you couldn't have missed Peg the Damsel's house. It was situated by a railway next to a level crossing. And you couldn't miss that either, because there was usually one gate shut and another gate open, because they were always half expecting a train to come. Now Peg the Damsel's house was done up to the veins of nicety. Dormer windows, tiles on the roof, pebbled ash walls, what you could see of them, because they were almost completely covered with ivy. All kinds of flowers in the garden, which was surrounded by a hedge, beautifully clipped. A barber couldn't have done a better job. And one of the hedges was allowed to rise, to give the effect of a woman playing the concertina, Peg herself, for she was a dinger on the box. If you heard her play the brogan ossel, you would never have asked for the radio to be switched on again. But of all the flowers in Peg the Damsel's garden, it was the roses that took pride of place, and she had all sorts of roses. She had June roses and tea roses, ramblers and climbers. But in the field behind Peg the Damsel's house, there lived a farmer who had 9 cows and 1 goat running among them. And this was a very destructive animal. This goat was known to break his way into Peg's garden. He'd see the roses, he'd sample them, he'd like them, and he'd make short work of them. So Peg complained the goat to the farmer and said, "What do you need a goat for? With 9 cows you can't be short of milk." And the farmer said, "It's not like that at all. A goat is supposed to be lucky. And what's more, this goat will eat the injurious herb, so the cows won't eat them. And that means they will go their full time, if you follow me." You don't need to be the Minister for Agriculture to know that. But Peg says, "I'll have you doing full time if that goat doesn't conduct himself, because you'll find yourself in front of the man with the white wig." And this was enough to make a farmer listen, a man terrified of litigation. He had seen it empty the pockets of many a fellow farmer. So he came to an agreement with Peg. "I have an old donkey chain," he said. "I'm going to shorten it and I'll make it fetters for the goat." She was satisfied with that, and it worked well for a while, until the goat cracked the timing of the chain, like the 2 lads in a 3-legged race, so much so that he moved faster with it than he ever did without it. Now, it was that same summer that Peg married the returned Yank, home from America. And all you need to know about the returned Yank was he was a man very partial to fancy shirts. So much so that he never wore the same shirt 2 days in a row, and often got his earful from Peg about the amount of washing he left for her to do. And there was one morning she was washing his favourite red shirt, brought it outside and left it on the hedge to dry, when along came the goat, probably attracted by the colour, broke its way into the garden, and just as Peg was opening the door, she saw the white button of the left cuff disappear down the throttle of the goat. And there was no point calling for the Yank. He was upstairs in Blanket Street. Because he had night work in America, he used to sleep during the day. But because he had no work in Ireland, he slept night and day. So there was nothing for Peg to do but pick up the broom and chase the goat. So the goat ran up the railway ditch, down the incline, and darted across the railway track, when something happened that would never again happen in a month of Sundays. One link from the chain went down over the square-headed bolt that pinned the rail chair to the sleeper, and left the goat on the track, unable to leave nor drive. And what was more, what did they hear coming? Whistle, the train they were half expecting was making its way towards the goat stranded on the track. And if you or me had been in that situation, we would have lost our heads. But the goat didn't, What did he do? Coughed up the red shirt and flagged down the train. Sinead.
Okay, and whenever you're ready.
Hello. I have a special guest with me today. His name is Donal O'Maolain. He's a poet, he's a primary school teacher, he's talented in everything traditional Irish. And I'll be speaking with him today, and he's going to do a few performances for us. He is a Seanachai. A Seanachai is an Irish storyteller. Hello, Donal.
Hello, Temi.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you very
I'm
much.
happy to have you on the show.
Delighted to be
Thank
here.
you for coming.
You're welcome.
What is Seanachai? What came about the storytelling, the concept of storytelling in traditional Irish society?
Now, storytelling goes back to the time of the Celts. When the Celts came here many thousands of years ago, they never recorded their events or of history or anything like that. For many thousands of years, nothing was written or recorded. It was all by word of mouth. And stories would have been passed down throughout the centuries by people known as bards. Now, the bard would have been a poet himself. He would have learned poems and stories to tell himself at social events, and they would have been almost as respected as the kings were, because they were so informed, these people. They were like the old Googles, if you like, back in the day.
And then the stories have been passed down from generation to them.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, so the bards would have passed them on, and then in the Christian times, they became known as a Seanachai. Because if you translate the word Seanachai, it means a bearer of old lore, if you like. So the Seanachai would have continued the stories on, and then as years went on, the Seanachai would have wandered the roads of Ireland, stopping in towns and villages, sometimes telling a story in exchange for a bed and food for the night as well. So that was passed on. The days before television, you would have had the Seanachai come to somebody's house, and maybe the entire village would come in. There'd be an evening of music and dancing, and then when everything stopped, everybody would sit and listen to the Seanachai. He'd sit by the fire, he might wear a hat, something similar to this, and you wouldn't hear a pin drop in the room, except when he cracked a joke or something in the middle of the story. So that's where the concept of the Seanachai comes from.
And obviously that was ingrained in the Irish society.
Most certainly, yes. Yeah, very strong in the west of the country, more so than here, which is a little bit sad, but yeah, it's still very strong in the west, especially in the Irish-speaking parts of the country. Places like Donegal and Kerry and Galway. Yes. It would be very, very strong there.
And it's remarkable that it's passed through the centuries, isn't it?
Certainly.
That it was kept up, and we are still here talking about it. How did that happen? Was it deliberate, or did people just never let go?
People never let go of their culture. It was the Celtic way of life, I suppose. It just continued through the centuries. People have always been very proud of their Celtic roots in this country. Never let it subside or whatever. And the social gatherings, especially in community areas, because they would have been very poor, there would have been little else happening in an agricultural country like Ireland. So meeting in somebody's houses for the music and song and dance would have been a huge part of their lives. A huge part of their lives.
That's great. And yourself, how did you get into Irish storytelling?
Right, I've always had a passion for Irish culture. For many years I was working in offices, and I wasn't enjoying it, and I wasn't pursuing everything that I love. But one day I just had
what were you doing before that?
I was an accountant for nearly 10 years.
That's a contrast, isn't it?
It certainly is. Yeah, there was always a teacher in me, but I was afraid to admit it. Maybe I wasn't brave enough. But one day a light shone and said, "It's time to end this. Time to become a teacher." And around the same time, I would have got involved in traditional music, I would have got involved in amateur dramatics, did a little bit of writing myself, and then with the lockdown, I saw an opportunity with the storytelling to make some videos on maybe Facebook or YouTube to brighten people's spirits, people who couldn't leave their houses and things like that. And I got a great response from it. So I've been looking at old Seanachais on YouTube, if you like, learning their stories and trying to make them my own if I can. And I've come up with a few of them.
That's brilliant. That's really good. That we are able even today to hear these things.
Exactly.
Because it's important that we don't lose sight of our culture, who we are, those things that we don't let go of them. So we're happy to have you. We're happy to have people like you who are ready to show us what these things mean. it's emotional, isn't it, as well?
Most certainly.
And those stories, the songs, the stories.
Yeah.
Are they true stories?
Many of them are true. A lot of the stories I tell would be perhaps not true stories, but based on very real people, if you like. Like the stories that would have passed down through the centuries were the old legends, the likes of Cuchulainn and Fionn McCool, might have been a little bit exaggerated. But then, as the centuries passed, the folklore would be, you'd be telling stories about very real people, such as in Peg the Damsel, a woman who had interrupted by the goat next door.
So that actually happened?
I have no proof that it definitely happened, but it's the type of thing... That might be a little bit of a twist on it now. But the likes of a goat eating flowers, I've heard those kinds of stories, certainly. You know, very real people and relatable. And when people hear stories about real people, they can laugh and say, oh, that reminds me of something that happened when I was a child or something. So there's a lot people can take from those stories.
That's good. Thank you very much, Donal.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
We'll
definitely have you again on the show.
I hope so.
I enjoyed the song, I enjoyed the poem, everything else. And thank you for joining us today.
It was early, all in the spring. The birds did whistle and sweetly sing, changing their notes from tree to tree. And the song they sang was Old Ireland Free. As I went walking up Wexford Street, my own first cousin I did chance to meet. My own first cousin did me betray, and for one bare guinea sold my life away. It was early, all in the night. The yeoman cavalry gave me a fright. The yeoman cavalry were my downfall, and taken was I by Lord Cornwall. And as they marched me up Wexford Hill, now who could blame me to cry my fill? I looked behind and I looked before, but my own dear mother I could see no more. As I was mounted on the scaffold high, my aged father was standing by. My aged father did me deny, and the name he gave me was the Croppy Boy. In Duncannon town now this boy died. In Duncannon town does his body lie. So all you people that do pass by, may you shed a tear for the Croppy Boy.
That was very, very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Happy Christmas to you all. It's been nice seeing you all. Thank you so much for viewing this show for this year 2020, and we hope to see you next year. Happy Christmas to you all. God bless you.